Hello, everyone. I know this is a very special situation, so this is a first time for me, and I think it's a first time for most of everyone. So I hope this can work out for everyone. I first of all, I appreciate your commitment with this class. I know that it could be a very difficult situation, but again, thank you for being here and for paying attention and time for this. I really tried to make this work throughout a video because instead of just reading like a very big document, I wanted you to have everything as visual as possible, as the same way we have it during the classes. Okay, so um, first of all, you need to know that the very last two projects were the special recovery projects. Okay, so basically, and unfortunately, again, this is going to be our summative assessment project. That means that this is going to be evaluated as the final exam of this unit. So please be very careful. You will have a lot of time to do this, but I really need to pay attention to what we are gonna do. Again, if you have any questions, you can write me back, and obviously I will try to answer them as soon as possible. I know that is going to be very challenging because sometimes because of the internet access, our whatever technology can be tricky, but again, it's going to be a commitment both sides, and I expect that everyone can really work and have the commitment as we all expect. Okay, obviously, this is going to be also a challenging thing because this will give you the opportunity to inquire a little bit more. Okay, even I'm going to try to share with you the class as we could do it any day. You will have to investigate a little bit more, and then you will have to watch the videos, and if needed, write down your questions, and then look for me to ask me if you have any questions. Okay, so our unit is the unit number 3. As you know, it's playing and experimenting with art. Okay, remember that we are working with this statement of inquiry that it's a creativity in art can be nurtured through playing and experimenting and can even result into something new. Okay, this, remember, it's the main and the central idea of everything we have been studying. I'm going to make this very, very quick recap because I think it's important, especially for a summative assessment. We have been working on this very important concepts: creativity, playing, experimenting, and new. But basically, it's a new style, okay? We have been working, obviously, about regarding creativity. It's how we can be creative, or how, remember that we have been talking about that creativity is not something that we are born with. Creativity, it's something that it's it gets throughout our eyes and our experiences. Okay, so creativity, it's not something you're born with. It's not something that is just about inspiration that comes and goes. It's about learning. Okay, so that is why it's very important to learn, to see, to go and watch movies, to read, to have any experiences traveling. Okay, and then obviously how we can nurture that, well, by playing and experimenting to create new stuff, and in this case a new style. Okay, so we very quickly we started with this guy called Vasily Kandinsky, a Russian guy who, as we know, he was a theorist. Actually, this is the book. I took it from my library because we have already learned about this guy who actually started to study as a lawyer at the law school, but then he became an artist. So, why is he important? Because he played and experimented with these very abstract shapes, very expressive kind of artwork. And as if you remember, one of the things that we studied about this guy, it's the synesthesia. For the ones who do not remember, it means that you are using both, or different senses. Like, for example, we were saying it's not been proved, but it's been said that Kandinsky had this thing about listening to music and then translating it into art. Okay, one of the things very important or that we have studied about Kandinsky is that he had different styles, like from this one that it's like very geometric, versus this one that it's like what we call biomorphic, that it's somehow inspired in like living things, like living cells. Okay, so also he experimented again with very geometric geometry shapes like circles, triangles, rectangles, lines. And remember, this was the one we recreated this exercise using the four blocks of music, and at the end we made four different products using watercolors. Our second artist during this unit was Georgia O'Keeffe. Again, Georgia O'Keeffe was very experimental because, as you can remember, when I told you about her life, she was somehow a feminist. She's been called the mother of the American modernism because she used as inspiration. She experimented and played with these like organic shapes that could be seen as flowers. Actually, they are like the close up of a flower to create this very abstract art pieces of work. Okay, one of the things also that we studied is that when she moved to New Mexico, she started to recreate the landscapes on a very abstract way. And as you can see, this is the example of some of the close-ups of some pictures from flowers that we use to create an artwork with our acrylic painting. Then we have the famous Jackson Pollock, an American artist, very well known from this period where experimenting was something important at the middle point of the 20th century. We have already learned about this guy, the keywords: action painting, dripping. We have we recreated this exercise, just making a little bit of a change. Instead of making a really big artwork as Pollock did, we made a very small artwork, but we used music and we all used our movements for the dripping and to recreate this beautiful expressive textures. Okay, then finally, as you can remember, we studied about this guy, Moritz Cornelius Escher, who played and experimented with mathematics. Okay, he's a very interesting kind of artist because obviously all or most of his art pieces are very mathematical. He obviously uses this like principles, the impossible Penrose triangle and the Moebius strip, to recreate, and well, obviously the tessellations from this kind of artwork, from this like Arabic kind of artwork, the mosaics was said. And then obviously he used all that inspiration, that playing and experimenting with math to recreate this beautiful artworks, black and white, most of them, but he also had some of them with color. We also talked about the symmetry, and he also had different styles. He had this like fantastic kind of artworks where he had this fusion between the 3D elements and the 2D elements, okay, to recreate impossible universes like this one, like the fantastic never ending mazes, and some other examples that we already analyzed during the class. Okay, so well, basically we have these four great artists from very different places and times: Kandinsky, Georgia O'Keeffe, Jackson Pollock, and Escher. And today, for this very final summative assessment project, we're going to use this guy. I ask you, have you any clue? Have you ever seen him? Well, believe it or not, yes. This guy, it's this same guy, and it's called Pablo Picasso. Why we're using Pablo Picasso? Well, I decided for this special activity to use Picasso, because usually we think that playing and experimenting it's exclusive from some kind of artist, like artists that sometimes we think that they have something very new for us. But the real thing, well, obviously, this is the Picasso we know. The Picasso we actually studied the last year during on sixth grade. It's the very, very abstract Picasso. A lot of geometry. Remember, we talked about like using different perspectives to create an artwork, like the very, very high contrast, a lot of color for his artworks. The one that it's at the bottom, it's the Guernica that we also talked a little bit about that last year, but it's part of the most famous Picasso artwork, or the part of Picasso that everybody thinks that when you're an artist, you're just born with it. But the real thing, guys, and that's why I use Picasso, because Picasso, it wasn't always like that. He actually played and experimenting throughout his whole life to become who he is, or he is well known now as the Picasso we know. Okay, so very quickly I'm going to give to present you this timeline about Picasso. Obviously you will have this presentation on a PDF as part of the materials, because I know that right now the little square is messing up with the whole screen. But the important thing here is that I want to show you Picasso started, he was born in 1881. He started painting as a hobby. When he was 13 years old, this is the kind of artworks that Picasso was actually creating. Not bad, pretty regular, but he was so into, he was an optimist about art. So when he actually started studying art, he actually, like on a regular basis, started studying in an academy. That was around his when he was 15 years old. And you can see that his artwork was really, really like traditional. In one sense, we can see that he was just, it was actually somehow, we could say that it's like kind of a realistic kind of artwork. And then we jump to 1901 when he was 19 years old. And that's when we have this like real change from Picasso. From studying or from being a regular student from any kind of academy, he really started to play and experiment with art, with this kind of artwork that we will talk about a little bit more about that later. But think about this. Remember that it's the beginning of the 20th century. We don't have so many artists making different things, but you could remember that we talked about some other, like Monet at the beginning of the 20th century, later Van Gogh, okay? So those artists are going to be actually the role models for this Picasso, this very young Picasso when he was 19 years old. Maybe this portrait that you are watching there, that it says 1901, could be for you, like you could say, it's not very exciting, it's like a very regular kind of painting, but for that time it was like very avant-garde. Remember, avant-garde, it's like to be in Spanish, vanguardia. It was very different, it was very new. Then at the end of that year, have you ever heard about the blue period of Picasso? Well, there's a story behind that. You will investigate, but the important thing is that he started to play and experiment with his own experiences and emotions. Okay, this is what is going to be about our summative assessment, using our own personal emotions, playing and experimenting with our experience, what we have felt. This is not now trying to recreate a very specific style or technique or method as we have been studying with some other artists, like again, George O'Keeffe, Kandinsky, or Escher. Right now, we're going to play and experiment with yourselves, okay? After 1901, throughout 1903, that's what we call the blue period. Then we have the pink period. Oh, it's 1903 throughout 1907. And that's another very special period. again, you will investigate about that, but the important thing is that color is going to give us a little bit about emotions. Okay, we have already studied about emotions and color psychology last unit. Remember that we are always going to gather the things that we are learning about, all the knowledge is accumulated, so don't forget about that. And then, obviously, again, the screen is not going to help us, but after the 1907, we have the Picasso that actually started this like super abstract figures. And it's going to start what we know as Cubism. He started basically inspired on some African kind of artworks at the beginning. That's why we see the Avignon ladies. That one of the most important Cubist examples from Picasso. And then after that, he will start recreating Cubism as his signature, as what it makes Picasso. Okay, so again, guys, well, you will see that in the presentation. He passed away in 1973, actually, when he was 91. So he had a very prosperous life. I think I have already told you that Picasso was one of the lucky ones who had success during his lifetime because he was able to sell a lot of his artworks, different from some other artists from the 20th century. Okay, so again, you will have all this information, but let's think about that he actually played and experimented to create later his brand signature style. That's a thing that we call Cubism. But if we consider that starting from the 19 when he was 19 years old, throughout uh, these years, throughout when he was 22, we can say it's a very short period, but it's the playing and experimenting that maybe he needed to create what is now the Picasso that we know. Okay, so this is the example of that like academy period when he recreated this very like classic artworks. Some of the names you will find them on the presentation. Even look at the names. Look, for example, Ciencia y Caridad from 1897. Look at the image. It's talking about, it's a representation of a person who is sick, and maybe we can see the nurse and the doctor that are around her. It's like a portrait of that age. Okay, then we see at the bottom Picasso's her mother's portrait that was in 1896. Again, nothing like very different. It wasn't very experimental. He was a student. He was following like the rules from that time, and very religious topics. La Primera Comunión, actually, this and you will find out during the inquiry um, process, that girl that it's part of the La Primera Comunión, you'll discover that it was her sister, that she actually passed away when Picasso was very young. And then this other painting that it's El Monaguillo, again, very classic. So then we jump to this. This is 1901 when Picasso actually um, left somehow the academy and started to play and experiment with the influence and the inspiration from other artists. Why Picasso was very, very attractive at this point for some other artists or from some other critics? Well, basically because he wasn't following the rules. He wasn't copying the standard ideas of that time. And again, if you try to analyze, especially from the first two images, you will see that the traces You see the traces that will remind us a lot to Van Gogh, to Monet. Those little strokes are, again, do you remember that with Impressionism and in Post-Impressionism, we have like these like hard strokes that are going to make not very well defined kind of images. But if we consider that this was in 1901 and then suddenly it changes to this little boy that it's holding a small dove, the style is actually changing, and there's a reason of why it's changing. You will discover that on a video that I'm going to add as part of the materials that you need to watch, okay? But then here in 1901, at the end of 1901, something very important happened to Picasso, and spoiler, you will see if he started to make drawings with blue, there's a theory that it's linked to something happening, something sad happening to Picasso, okay? Um, Actually, you will see that information in the presentation. I will give you the clue. It's the death of a very close friend, a very, very important friend for Picasso. I mean, this is a theory. There are several theories. One of the most important one is the one that talks about the death of his friend. Okay, so we can say first part, it's the breaking scene when Picasso started to catch the attention of the critics, and then we'll start playing and experimenting with emotions. Okay, so this is the blue period. As you can see, these are like very sad, kind of experiencing topics. Again, you will understand a little bit more with the investigation, but important thing here is that you try to analyze all like the expressiveness of every example you can see here. They are trying to express us maybe loneliness, maybe poverty, maybe a tragedy that something happened. They are not nice scenarios. Okay, then we have the pink period. Again, this is a theory, but it's been said that it's pink. Also, the style is changing. Again, not only the content, not only the topic, but also the style is changing, okay? And for this period, it's been said that Picasso was in love with someone, and that's why he started to use this like pink and orange kind of color palette. He felt on a different way, but again, you will investigate and research for that. Okay, so what are we going to do? It's we are going to play an experiment with the period or one of the periods that it's part of this red square. Okay, we are not going to use cubism. Okay, guys, please, it's super important. We're not going to use like the academy style, like the classic academy style from Picasso. Neither we are not going to use the cubist. We're going to use these three specific periods as part of your investigation slash presentation slash final project. Okay, what we're gonna do is the following. Oh well, obviously, before anything, please watch this video. It's specifically about an exhibition that explains on a better way about this year, this important year when Picasso started to play and experiment something different out of the like the classical academic kind of style. Okay, watch this video and then you will decide. This video obviously it's part of an exhibition that it's called Becoming Picasso from 1901 in Paris. So this project is going to be becoming yourself. Okay, we're going to play an experiment to create a style based on your own feelings and experiences. Okay, so very quickly. Okay, Number one, oh, number zero is watch the video. Super important, please. Number one, you will choose one of these three Picasso periods. Only one, guys. Only one. You will choose part of the artworks that are included in the Becoming Picasso period, or one of the blue period, or one of the pink period. Okay? Only one, guys, please. Number two, you will investigate about one specific artwork to use it as inspiration. Okay, what we're gonna do, it's somehow I I'm, I wrote down here that it's a reinterpretation, but it's actually going to be a whole interpretation. It's going to be a personal interpretation. Why is that? Because maybe let's say that you um, are going to choose the guitarist from Picasso. That's part of the blue period. What you're gonna do, it's not gonna make a copy. You're not going to just barely change something. You are going to make with any of these three different artworks and periods, you're going to make a self portrait, okay? This self portrait, if for example you are using the Becoming Picasso period, that is the one from the video, you're going to make a self-portrait where you will use the pictorial style. Remember that pictorial style, it's about how we see the artwork, okay? So pictorial style, we have pop art, impressionism, post-impressionism, cubism, right? So the pictorial style from the Becoming Picasso period, it's some from a perspective, the perspective of some of the critics from art, it's called post-impressionism. It's part, yes, it's like painting with the style of Van Gogh, okay? And what are you going to show throughout that self-portrait? Well, you're going to show how you feel now, okay? That if you choose the number one, then you will do a self-portrait with that style, but trying to transmit or to share the way you feel now. If you choose number two, that it's the blue period, then you will do a self-portrait where you will use the pictorial style. This is called Fauvism, that we have in the past, perhaps last year, we have talked a little bit about that. Don't worry so much about the name. What I want you, again, it's remembering art, it's 80% analysis, like when you analyze something with your eyes, okay? So what I want you to analyze is, again, from that specific artwork from the blue period, you are going to use it as inspiration to create your own self-portrait about a moment where when you felt sad or disappointed. This I think that could be a memory from the past. Usually it's going to be easier for you if you take a memory from the past, any kind of memory. Just remember that obviously it's up to you. If it's something that you don't feel very comfortable to share with, then better don't choose that, okay? Or the third option, that it's going to be the pink period. You're going to make a self-portrait where you will use this pictorial style again, where some critics, it's they actually, this is I will change this because the pink period, it's more like expressionism from a pictorial point of view. But again, don't worry so much about the style. It's going to be obviously important for your investigation, but the important thing is that you analyze what you see, okay? What you are seeing from what how is going to how you're going to use the reference of the real artwork to translate this into your own artwork. Obviously, for the pink period, you will use this self-portrait. You will create a self-portrait where you will have to show a happy moment, a moment where you felt excited or maybe in love. And this could be also from the past, but also from the present. Okay? And this is the grading criteria. I know it's a lot of information, but don't worry. As always, I will upload this into throughout this basic piece of paper with all the information and actually with the questionnaire and all the things that you will have to investigate regarding the artwork. But I really want to check with you some of the criteria that we're going to grade this time. One of the criteria is at A, criterion A, knowing and understanding. And the number three, demonstrate awareness of the links between the knowledge acquired, investigation, and artwork created. That means, guys, again, it's not a copy. I don't want you to make any kind of copy of that artwork. It's going to be just like having the artwork. This is going to be our inspiration. And using that style, we are going to create a self-portrait because we are playing and experimenting with our emotions, okay? So another thing important, it's on criteria B. Number two, demonstrate the application of skills and techniques to create and present art. Yes, guys, you are going to present this artwork. That doesn't mean it, I don't care if it's later. I mean, it's going to be later. After the holiday season, you will have to have a presentation. Again, you will find that in the document that I will upload, but basically it's going to be a 5-minute presentation. You will have to have obviously the highlights of your investigation, and you will need to understand what you are doing so I can ask you some questions regarding your presentation, and that's going to be also part of your grade. Finally, and that's why I just try to highlight a little bit more those, it's the D criterion responding. It says, number one, identify connection between art forms, art and context, or art and prior learning. Prior learning, guys. It's very important. Pay attention. Color psychology. You know this stuff. Please use it as part of your investigation. Use it as part of your vocabulary. Sometimes you are not describing enough of the things that you already know or that we have already studied. Number two, recognize that the world contains inspiration or influence for art. Well, basically, it's that you know what you have investigated already about that specific artwork. And number three, evaluate certain elements or principles of artwork. Well, that's just the whole thing of the investigation. As always, guys, I don't pretend you to learn something just, but you don't have to do it. You will be able to present with a piece of paper with your notes and your highlights, okay? Again, this is not about learning just because I need you to learn information. I just need you to try to make the connections between the statement of inquiry and the things and the artist and the vocabulary and the concepts that we are trying to connect with this statement of inquiry. Okay, something else, guys. You will see that in the classroom, but it's going to be super important. You are at home. I cannot give you feedback during the creative process, but it's super important, guys, and I'm always trying to share with you this. It's not about your it's not only about your skills or your abilities. Obviously, I'm grading them because I pretend I expect from you to improve, but it's more important for me to have your own development, your own learning process, instead of, you know, just maybe having help from home. Okay? Obviously, if you have at home parents, siblings who know about art, ask them about some advices. But I really want you guys to make your own artwork. It's not gonna be helpful if someone starts to create your artwork, okay? I don't want perfection. I want you to actually let yourselves play and experiment with your own abilities, with your own skills and the knowledge, okay? Okay, so I think I have talked a lot already. So I will be uploading again the deliveries. This is basically the project for the 3 weeks, okay? So part A obviously will be the drafting. Will you will need to send me the draft obviously so I can give you feedback based on the draft. Oh, and I did not say anything about the technique. This is going to be acrylics, okay? I know that it could be a little bit tricky because I think that most of you have the acrylics at home. If not, paintings. In case you don't, I highly recommend you to buy a little set like this one. I know that you already bought some, but this little set could be helpful for this 3 week period. And it's going to be super important, guys. Over here, I have some of the brushes that I have already told you that they're going to be super, super, super important. These are like the basic brushes for multiple purposes. You can use this kind of brushes for watercolors, for acrylics. You can find them in at Lumen. But do you see? I have already shown you all of this, guys. These are not very soft. Let me do this. These are not like entirely soft. They are actually a little bit like, they have some resistance. Guys, if you don't have the right material, it's going to be super, super difficult for you, okay? Something else for the portrait, because it's going to be a self-portrait, again, it depends on the art form you are choosing. None of them are realistic, okay? Some of them could be like specifically, and especially the first one, the first block, let me go back very quickly. The first one, that it's the Becoming Picasso 1901, that one could possibly seem like something realistic, but again, guys, pay attention to the things that you are observing. It's that those little strokes or movements that I have already teach you about, okay? If it's going to be the style of the blue period or the pink period, those they're still not entirely realistic. We can say that they have maybe a little bit more of detail, but again, guys, I don't expect you I don't expect you to do a copy. We are creating a style, your style, obviously using as reference a very famous artist and his own creative process, but we are basically playing and experimenting with your own experiences and feelings, okay? Okay, guys, I think that's all for now. I will start sending dates, documents, questionnaires, links, and everything else. So have a happy evening and be safe. Bye.